Welcome back to the Amazing Education Channel. Choosing tenants, finding tenants if you have a rental property. Now you might say, how could I ever have a rental property? Well, many people inherit rental properties. For example, a family home where you don't live there and your parents are getting older, and then unfortunately they might pass away or they may move into some kind of assisted living, but they don't want to give up the house. Well, you might not consider renting it unless you really need the money, and almost everything is removed, stored away in the attic. You can even add a lock to an attic door, or even like a hatch space can be locked. And you could provide a key if there are paints or tools, or you can leave tools that are needed for the yard, and you could rent the space out. And it's a way of being financially secure. Now, I'm recommending doing this instead of selling the property. If you have the time, if you're good with people. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. It's for education purposes only. Please like, thumbs up, and subscribe if it helps you. Comment, and you can watch all the other videos. It provides information that really are going to benefit you. The information that will benefit you, maybe not what you expect to hear. So I'm saying, yes, don't sell the old family house. Turn it into a rental. If you're good with details, good with money, good with people. If you're somebody who has had lawsuits in the past and different troubles with money especially, then well, it might help you out of your money troubles if you've matured. But if you still consider yourself immature, maybe you should really sell the house and get a financial advisor. 90% of people should have a financial advisor, and it's a real way. Most wealthy people have financial advisors. They don't handle the money. It's too complicated. Now, you probably need over $100,000 or $200,000 to have a financial advisor. That's true. But frankly, if you sell a house, you probably have that much. If that's your portion of that home, over $100,000 or $200,000, then there you go. Definitely over $250,000. Then you reach the FDIC bank insurance limit, like the guarantee on an account limit is usually $250,000. So if you have more than that, you should split the money up into separate bank accounts, maybe even separate banks, so that you are protected there. And then have a financial advisor is what I recommend for 90% of people. Like if you're a straight A student or an A student with high IQ and good with money, you 10%, lucky 10% or less of people that are successful with properly investing money instead of going bankrupt or being close to broke most of the time, maybe living paycheck to paycheck. You paycheck to paycheck people probably really 100% need a financial advisor. With 10% of your money that you don't mind losing, because you probably will lose it, and you could play with investing. I don't recommend stock trading, and definitely not any day trading from day to day. It's a really good way to lose money. And realize that markets, even with a financial advisor, when the entire economy goes down the dumps because of some kind of war or major economic issues, the economy can go down for a year or a year and a half, steadily or intermittently dropping in what's called a bear market. And it could stay down for years and decades when we get into the current overspending situation right now the government is in with vastly overspending, where the national debt is far beyond the annual production or gross domestic product of the country. And so we're in that situation right now. And if you look at what happened to Japan in the 1980s, where they never recovered virtually hardly anything of their investments are above what they were in the mid 80s, like 1985, 1986, or whenever the height of the Japanese market was. And why did they have this situation? Well, it was incredible speculation and trading and investing, just like we have in the United States right now. The market was incredibly overvalued, but that's not the primary cause. Primary cause was government trying to solve their financial crisis after sort of a crash in their markets, and government trying to spend their way out and then needing to pay for it with incredible taxation. It's a huge problem. So there were what are called infrastructure projects by the government to spend money and attempting to get the economy healthy again and investments back up, but it was actually causing more trouble, as usual, which government usually does when it gets involved in economics. Now, it's good for protecting borders and safety in many cases, although you could argue that, especially when you don't have term limits and you don't have elected heads of state, heads of countries and nations, if they're not elected and they don't have term limits, then they usually cause trouble for the country instead of helping the country. People die, they start wars, invasions, just like we see in Russia. So now, like I said, this is information that benefits you, not necessarily what you expect to hear. It's also about the information, it's not about the video. So don't expect wonderful video. I just have my phone and different views. It's not really to watch, more to listen to. So now, selecting tenants, and how can you make sure you get a good tenant? Well, guess what? You can actually choose. So if you have a rental house, you get to choose who's going to live there, and you just say, well, you're considering different candidates and the best one will be chosen, and you don't have to give a timeline and just say, well, you haven't found somebody. If you need to decline a tenant, just tell them that you're not making a decision. You understand that they would like to move in at a certain date, and to tell them to keep looking because you haven't made a decision yet. It's a perfect way to get rid of undesirable tenants that maybe you just don't feel comfortable with them. They might be rude, annoying, and just not fit the criteria. For example, you might have, because the property may be, say, in a student zone, and you think, well, you're going to have complaints and people will move out if you get, say, a family with young children and they're going to need sleep, but it's a party zone for students near a university. Then, you can't discriminate against families. You certainly can't. There can be a limit on the number of people in a house, but you can't say, well, this is a student party zone, so I'm afraid you can't live there. You're not allowed to discriminate on family status, but you can just delay, and then they're going to want housing and they'll find another place. And so you never say no to them in that situation. And there's the opposite situation where you have, near a university, students want to live in a house, maybe your rental place, but it's a quiet neighborhood with professionals, doctors, lawyers, and even instructors at the college or the university, faculty, staff, and professors. And so then you don't want students living there, and usually the neighborhoods near a university would have some kind of regulations and zoning through the township that says only 2 unrelated people allowed to live in a single family home. So they don't have to be a family, but if they aren't a family, it limits to 2 people. So therefore you avoid most students. But then of course graduate students or students that are wealthy, they might have the money and still want to rent a house, and then they could end up having parties and destroying property, causing the neighbors to be upset, even driving their cars without fixing the muffler or other parts, making the car noisy or unsafe, and speeding in the neighborhood. And believe me, I've had this problem, which is why I know it can happen with even mature seeming students, but they're, say, graduate students, they're over 20, 21, 22, but they're going to possibly have a lot of friends, have a lot of activities, parties, and you could have legal drug use in some states, and which, you know, for example, some states it's legal to have cannabis, and then you have smoking, even if it's a non-smoking property, but at a party they sort of lose control. Then you can give them a warning. If you end up with these kind of tenants, which I'm recommending against, that you shouldn't get them, but if you can't discriminate against them because it's just 2 people and you need the money and you go ahead and rent to them and you can't find other renters, which hopefully you should, but if you don't or can't, or they trick you and somehow turns out they're students when you thought they were employees, which, yes, it could happen to me because it did. And so anyway, it could happen to you too. So if you have that situation and you give them a warning and say this is partying with smoking because it's a non-smoking property, well, you have this one warning, and if it happens again within a 12-month time frame, which don't tell them within 12 months, but just tell them again. If it happens again, that's a violation of the release, and then they would have 30 days to move out. But it's really harsh, and they might retaliate. So it's better just to, hopefully they would comply, and you wouldn't have to have them move out. And how would you know that they were smoking? Well, you should have an annual inspection. And if the person smells smoke when they go in to inspect the property, which hopefully you can inspect it yourself, but maybe you would have a home inspector or trusted, like maybe a lawyer or other mature adult, inspect the property annually for damage and needed repairs, and then you would find out, oh well, it smells like smoke, and there's no smoking policy.